for their hearts. They're both very active in evangelistic ministry. But God has used Brother David, not just in the Assemblies of God, but in many, many different venues, in schools and in churches around the country and around the world. But even more so, the Lord has opened doors for many years now for him to minister to the troops. And we're very honored that this is the first stop for Brother David coming back from being in Iraq and ministering to the troops. And perhaps he'll share a little bit of what's taking place there right now. But I just thank the Lord for his transparency, his openness. He sustained a very tragic event in his life, but God has turned this around and opened incredible doors to touch lives, hundreds and literally hundreds of thousands of lives now around the world. So would you welcome Evangelist Dave Roever? Pastor Jonathan, if you would help him to come up, and I'm going to get a chair for you. Thank you so much. Praise the Lord. Brother David.
Thank you, Pastor. Thanks. Well, good morning. That is one rocking choir, people. That is, and I tell you, you get that song in your head, and it's just going to stick there. It's one of those like Happy Birthday, you can't get them out of your mind. That was a great presentation. I wish I was here for Christmas. I'd come to that. I love you. I'm so glad we're together. Thanks, Pastor, for the opportunity. And it's neat that you'd come out on a cold winter's day like this. I used to see snow like that, and it just scared me to death. Then I moved to Colorado, and it doesn't mean anything now. Well, I think we got 8 inches of what you're getting right now, and it moved this way. I wasn't there. I've been over in a place where it doesn't snow. Been over in Iraq with our troops. You like good news, don't you? Well, get ready. You got your seatbelt on? We're winning this war. And let me show you how. There are people that don't want us to win the war because it might make the president look nice. We don't want to do anything to make him look good. But he's not over there fighting this war. These boys are. And our girls. I was in 4 hospitals in the last month over there. And each time I went in, I braced myself for what I knew was coming. A year ago, when I was there, I held them in my arms as they died. They died in my arms. And let me tell you something. You don't forget those moments. So I went back bracing for it. I went to the largest hospital in what used to be called the Green Zone. It's now called the International Zone. Not a single warrior. Not one wounded warrior in a bed. Went to the next hospital, not a warrior. 3rd hospital, not a warrior. 4th hospital, 1 warrior. He was constipated. That's what was in the 4 hospitals, not a soldier wounded. That was the most incredible thing. I'll never forget that. And I won't forget when I landed there. The government provided me a beautiful jet to fly in, a private personal jet. And I landed in that big international airport. And there was the unfortunate reality that the war's still going. My staff and I stepped out of the airplane, walked over to a C-130 that had about probably 30 guys on each side lining the entrance up the ramp in the back, and they were sending home the remains of a young warrior who had been killed. I stood there and wept at they call it a Patriot service in the back of the airplane. And then the chaplain invited all of us up in there, and he prayed for the family. I stood there and I actually wept very bitter tears knowing that there was a family at home that was weeping and broken. And this is the tragedy of war. I just thank God that there has finally come a time when in this war we can look and say we are making progress. It's been a long, hard road. But our soldiers are so brave, and I went with them. They asked me they said, would you go to, well, they call them FOBs, F-O-B, that's forward, boy, I'll finally get it right, forward operational bases, not unidentified flying objects. these forward operational bases, they get in there and do some amazing things. They get right in the middle of the worst parts and set up their little bases. And I was in Solder City, and I found, if you don't know what Solder City is, that is one bad place. And never heard a rifle fire. Never, not even the sound of a rocket explosion. The progress that has been made has been at great expense, but it's paying off now. I was with every one of the generals running this war. I met with every one of them, except Petraeus, who was on the circuit I was on, and he was about 8 hours in front of me, and he was doing the same thing I was doing, going and visiting with the troops. It was the holiday, and so I just didn't get to meet with him. I met with all the others. I met with Odierno. I met with General Couch. I met with General Lynch, and these men that are running this war, some of the fine colonels that are promotable, they're moving on up the ranks in this war, will become generals, have become dear friends, and the Lord has put me in a position to pray for them and with them. Now, what do you think of this? When you walk into a general's office in the middle of a war, and instead of protocol where they actually set you down, they give you tea and a cookie, and then when he comes out, he greets you and invites you into his office. You just sit down and have a little chat and then leave. I walked up, the door slammed open, the general threw his arms open and said, "I've been waiting on you, Brother Dave." Pulls me in his office, and the blackboard is covered not with battle plans of the day, but with scriptures of the day, as lives are being changed by generals praying with their troops. It's the most amazing thing that, and this is virtually without exception. I mean, I can sit here and say that of the generals, no exception. One colonel had not done that yet, and I talked to him about it. Time to get your act together, boy. And but you know, it's just been the most wonderful thing. I go every year. I'm called in by the military with the Department of Defense, and I'm the only minister in the history of the war on terror. The only, no exception. I'm the only minister that's ever been called to do this for our troops during this war. I'm going to tell you something. That makes a huge impact in my life, that I've been honored to do this. And I admit, too, that some of it is the fact that I have a military history. And I am recipient of the Purple Heart and a lot of very wonderful medals that hold importance in the eyes of these generals. And they see that I have history and that we served honorably, and they call me. And I look back and I say, whoa, God, couldn't you have made that happen without me being all shot up, burned, mutilated, and left for dead twice? Couldn't you have pulled an easier cord on this thing? And I mean, about the only job I could get now is Phantom of the Opera. At least you can wear a mask. And I'm serious. God wasn't there a better way. Let them shoot me in the lower back. I'll pull my pants up. Nobody know I ever got hurt. Now, I catch it right in the face. I catch it right in the smacker. There's no way to hide it. You know, I can't hide it. God had a plan. He didn't do this to me. God doesn't do evil. Say it with me. God doesn't do evil. Say it again. God doesn't do evil. God didn't kill your grandmother. He didn't start the war in Vietnam. It's not his fault. None of that. You know, it's a product of sin. We all have to die unless we go by way of the rapture, and that's all right with me. I don't mind that. I'd really like to cheat the old death angel. But he's after me because I think he thinks I've cheated him out of 8 of my 9 lives. They pulled the sheet over me twice in Vietnam. They took my colon out here the other day and left me a gutless wonder. 6 feet of colon. Threw it in the garbage. Isn't that wild? I'm the fat man you ever met, can lose his colon and still gain weight. I can sit in my own lap and tell myself ghost stories. I tell you, I'm so tired of it. And then before I left for Iraq, about 8 weeks before I left for Iraq, my heart went into, it stopped. It just dropped me like a bad habit. Thankfully, I was in the hospital the last time it did that, and they were getting ready to shock me. And I woke up, and the doctor jumped back, and I said, "Don't you do that. Put those things down. You shock me. Do not do that to me. You might kill me." He said, "You were dead." He said, "I can't believe this." He said, "Your heart went into normal sinus rhythm. It's been in AFib for no one knows how long, and I had no energy. My heart was beating at 189 beats a minute. It wasn't circulating enough blood, and they said I had all kinds of blood clots. 8 weeks later, I'm in Iraq with a perfectly good heart. And I tell you, I put the death angel on a starvation diet. He's not getting me till Jesus says, come home. You know, that's the way I see it. And a couple of times I thought we might be close lately, but thank God every one of us in this room have a plan for our lives, and God's going to keep you here till that work's done. And I'm looking for and praying for, and I believe going to be part of the greatest revival in military history. Sometimes we baptize them in Saddam swimming pools. I preach in his palaces. And I was in a palace the other day preaching, and I had about 400 people there, and here's all the generals and everybody there. And I looked around and I said, can you imagine Saddam ever dreaming this day would ever come? All his palaces are being used as military installations and chapel services and churches, and wow, boy, he must be spinning in his grave, you know. I sat on his throne the other day. He has a big old throne up there. They said, you want pictures on it? I said, sure. So I sat down on it. I won't tell you everything I did on that throne. I'm not going to tell you everything. Your imagination is exactly right. But among other things, I sat there and I said, Saddam built this throne, and the history's written up there, to send to Jerusalem. Listen to this. He was going to send it to Jerusalem when he conquered Israel, and he would rule the world from that throne. Here's a knuckle-headed evangelist sitting on his throne saying, Jesus is going to rule the world, and he'll rule it from his own throne. Doesn't need this one but for a footstool. Amen? So there's exciting things happening all over the world, and God's blessed us with the opportunity to minister to our wonderful troops, and that includes our Special Forces troops, our Navy SEALs. Matter of fact, the Navy SEAL's my bodyguard, and that boy lays life down for me. And I told him, I said, don't you ever do that. And I said, you can go along and help me, but don't you be dying for me. I said, I couldn't live with that. I said, don't you? He said, you just do your job and I'll do mine. Shut up and let's go. And that way we win. And I said bye to him day before yesterday, and we celebrated that nobody got hurt. And if you'd known the places we went, like Fob Callahan, right down in that Ford operational base, right down in the middle of the city, my goodness, they don't have to shoot you. They can throw rocks at you and kill you. It's so close, you're just right in the middle of them, and not a gunshot. I tell you, it's just the best news. Geraldo came in behind me, and I said, if you don't tell the truth, I'm personally going to start a campaign against you across America. And I'm going to tell the truth about what you're saying if you don't say it right the first time. He was on this morning, and he did a good job. Good job. He said it right. And so I think that finally there's hope. And y'all keep praying for the troops. Amen? Keep on praying. Prayer changes things. The Taliban said it, and it's the only thing they said that was ever true. This is a holy war. And it is. They asked me to come. I said, you got an M16? That scared them. I said, do you have an M16? They said, well, yeah. I said, well, you bring it. I'll bring a John 3:16, and we can fight this war together. I think they breathed a sigh of relief, and I want to make sure I wasn't as crazy as I sounded, but that's what we're doing. They're fighting the physical side, and I'm fighting with them on the spiritual side. And I held that one boy in my arms last year I was mentioning, and as he passed away, he was burned 100% third degree. He broke my heart. Broke my heart. I tell you, I can hardly speak of it now. He was just 19 years old. He was from Indianapolis, Indiana, truck driver. Took a rocket right into the tanker and exploded and burned him to charred pieces. He was 100% third degree, no hope. No one ever survived that. And I turned his head where his ear was once, and I spoke into that little hole in the side of his head. And I have an artificial ear. If I took it off, the same exact thing. It's just a little hole where the ear was. And there's an ear canal, and he had an eardrum still intact. And I just bent down and whispered in his ear. I said, you know, this is not a hospital here. This is now a sanctuary, and you're not on a gurney. You're on an altar, and you're more than a soldier. I told him, I said, you're a sacrifice for the cause of freedom. And I bent right down and whispered just as clearly as I could. I said, with that said, I want you to know that I have come from America on behalf of a grateful nation. I came to tell you thank you. His body shuddered from his head to his feet, and a long, slow breath exited through where his nose had been. Just cartilage remains. And he slipped away from my arms to the arms of God. The last words that boy heard was when I said thank you. It's the last thing he heard. Along the way, I've had people remind me of my history in an unusual way. See, I never went in the Army. I was being drafted and I joined the Navy because I wanted to choose the branch of service I would serve in. To tell you the truth, I was a bona fide chicken. I didn't want to go in the Army and get somebody to shoot me. Get in the Navy, you're out there in the ocean. Who's going to shoot you there? So I joined the Navy. Didn't work. They sent me straight into into Vietnam. And my story springs out of that, and I'll get to that. But here I am in Iraq with the Army, holding this guy in my arms. He dies, and people say to me, I hear their words, wow, starts with that usually. Wow, Mr. Roever, you speak to presidents and you address NATO and you speak at SHAPE, the supreme headquarters for the Allied powers of Europe. And I do, and I'm not bragging, but I'm making the point. They'll take out my highlights and then they'll stick this little statement on the end. Listen to this. They'll pick out the highlights and they'll say, you'd do it all again, wouldn't you? And I say, do what again? You know, Vietnam and all. I want to slap them. I didn't want to do this in the first time. That's why I joined the Navy. Don't get hurt in the Army. I played football in the 9th grade, one down. It hurt so bad I quit and joined the band and watched other kids get hurt. Now there's the hero sitting in front of you, all right? I'm no hero. I didn't want to get hurt. My philosophy on pain is it hurts. My philosophy on running is why. I'm not physical. I'd rather sit than stand any day. And so they're saying you do it all again. Well, that boy slipped away from my arms when he died that day. I knelt beside his gurney and I prayed a prayer that I have never forgotten, nor has God. I said, if what I have been through is what it took to put me at this boy's side, to be the right man at the right time in the right place, and the last words he heard as he slipped into eternity is a fellow American saying thank you, then God, you can write this down. I'll do it again. If you want me to, again and again and again, I don't care. It doesn't matter to me. Just don't let my pain be in vain. Let it open the door to an opportunity to tell of your love and to be with a dying soldier. He's answered that prayer. And I can say to you today that as much as it hurt, I have no regrets. And in fact, I would do it again. And I remember the pain. I know what it's like to hurt so bad I put my face in the pillow and screamed and lifted my head from the pillow. And my face was still stuck to it. My face came off and I looked at my face in the pillow. I know what it's like. And when they start pulling the dead skin off my body, cutting it with sharp knives and debriding and pulling off the dead flesh, I remember the pain so much. I grabbed a nurse and pulled her right into the tank with me and was trying to drown her before they got me off of her and saved her life. And I remember that she didn't back down. She got her hair pushed back up, dripping over her shoulders, and she continued her job until they finished a horrible thing that they have to do to a fellow human being, but it has to be done. You can't live without it. I've thought of it many times in light of sin, how sin will just singe us. It'll burn us. It'll burn us. Sin's a terrible thing. You get too close to the fire, you get burned, and then it's time for the dead flesh to be cut away. The Bible calls it circumcision. I call it debridement. And the most horrible thing in the world is having that old flesh cut loose. That dead flesh has to come off or you're going to die. You can't live with it. It'll become systemic in the infections and you cannot die. You can't live. You'll die. And I thought how terrible sin is that we treat it so cavalier, not realizing one day we're going to have to be debrided. We'll get too close to the fire. We're going to get burned. And I know that feeling. I pray to God, if you don't know Jesus, you don't get too close to the fire. But if you mess around without him, you're going to fall in the fire. I can tell you right now, you can't live this life without Christ and not end up in sin. It takes Jesus to live this life sin-free. And even then we fall, but thank God we have an advocate with the Father. Amen. Jump up. Don't lay there. Get up, dust yourself off. And it is your fault. Keep on serving Christ. I can't say I've never sinned since I found Jesus. I can say I haven't sinned without getting forgiveness. I don't let that sin ride, and I don't commit that one again. I get out of there. I don't like that. I mean, if you get your foot nailed to the floor, you go in circles. You just keep falling in the same sin. Well, unnail thy foot, friend. Get free. Get free of that sin that so easily beset you. And so I ended up preacher's kid going to a war that I didn't start and didn't understand. And I had all my principles in line. I'd given my heart to Christ at 16 years old. I fell in love with Brenda at 16 years old. I woke up at 16. It was a good life. I was a Bible college student whenever I was inducted and being drafted, but I was 16 when I fell in love. And I asked her to marry me, and she slapped me. She said, I'm 13, it's not Kentucky, and I'm not your first cousin. I said, does that mean no? I figured it out. She said if I loved her, I'd wait for her. She kept the door open. And I did love her, and I waited for her, and she graduated. We got married. So for all the teenagers in this room, I want to tell you, we were both virgin when we got married. Both virgin. I did everything in my power. I thought that I could do otherwise and not be virgin when I got married. And I told her, I said, you have the body. She said, I'm 13. I said, yeah, the body of a 14-year-old. I thought, that would convince her that she was mature. I was so stupid. I was the dumbest kid on the block, man. I grew up thinking I was fat, ugly, and stupid, and then I met her, and she told me to quit saying that. She said, you are not stupid. I ended up marrying her. She's been with me on this ride, and boy, what a great woman. So we were virgin when we married, and 40 years later, we're still married. You thought I was going to say virgin, didn't you? You did too. I could see your eyes. They went. I have 2 children, and my son is with me, and I think they gave him a break a little while ago and took him back and let him have a Danish and something to drink. He's my best friend. Best friend I ever has, my boy. And today he's 35, 36 years old, working on his doctorate now. He's following in my footsteps to take over this ministry when I can't go any farther, and he'll run that lodge out there in Colorado where I bring the wounded warriors. These are the kids that get shot up and lose their limbs in Iraq and Afghanistan. I got a boy out there, suicide bomber, rushed him, was 6 inches from him when he pushed the button, and the suicide bomber exploded. Brian Fleming was standing there, unbelievable, still alive, reached down to find his legs, and to his amazement, they were still there. The legs in front of him belonged to the suicide bomber. He grabbed for an arm, and there it was, still hanging there. The arms he saw belonged to the suicide bomber. The suicide bomber disintegrated. His entire torso was totally disintegrated, and Brian had second-degree burns on his face and hands, a few spots of third degree, was out of the hospital in 4 months, alive and well, and preaching the gospel of Jesus Christ today. BJ lost 2 legs. He's got 2 little stems made of titanium. He arrived out the ranch. I said, now I'll put in an elevator here so you can use it. He said, I don't need no stinking elevator. I said, BJ, the elevator is for guys with no legs. These steps are difficult. He said, I don't want no stinking elevator. I said, fine, use the steps. So I used the elevator. I don't use those steps. It makes me breathe hard. Why step when you can elevate? That's my other philosophy. I just made that one up. Well, the third night we were sitting down to eat, and we were waiting for BJ, and I thought I heard him coming up the steps. Then I heard crash, bump, 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 thud. We ran over and looked down the stairs, and there he is on the floor putting his legs back on. I said, can you say elevator? And he said, it's my fault, Mr. Roever. I was trying to run the stairs backwards. Let it soak in. This is what the quality of our military is. They never give up. Take their legs, they'll get something else and use them just as well as they do the legs they had. Indomitable human spirit. And when it's committed to Christ, the devil's got a problem on his hands. He's got a big problem. We have a house full, and I told them, they said, how many of us are you going to run through here? I said, 3,000. My goal is 3,000 in this coming decade. They said, why 3,000? I said, that's one for every victim on September 11th. I'm not letting the devil get by with anything. I'm the sharp stick in Osama's eye. I'll make him rue the day he touches this country. Don't tell me I'm a big dreamer. If one man can make it bad, another man can make it good. Where sin abounds, grace much more abounds. Get a dream and live to it. Believe it. Dream it and do it. That's what I say. So they don't send me to Iraq over there because I'm good looking, although that could be. I don't rule that out completely. If I look this good after what I've been through, you can believe I was a beautiful baby. That's all silly talk. Don't take any of that too serious. They don't send me because of my military might. I'll be all right in just a minute. Catch my breath. They don't send me for my intellect. If that was the case, they would have drafted my brother. I was in the top 10% of the lower 1/3 of my class. That's a fact. They gave me half a credit just to get me out of school. I said, well, what's the half credit going to be in? They said, home economics. And that was my best grade. I never went to a class. They send me because I'm more than a conqueror through Jesus Christ. That's why they send me. They send me because I'm not sitting in a bar popping tops and sucking suds and doing drugs and beating my wife and molesting my kids. And they send me because I'm not sitting on a corner with a piece of plastic or cardboard saying stranded in Fargo, Vietnam vet, please help, we'll work for food. They know. And when I come, I have a story of victory. Look at me. I'm nothing without Jesus. I'm nothing. But with Jesus, I can do all things through him who strengthens me. I can't be defeated. I'm not a cat with 9 lives. I'm a cat with eternal life. And I'm not dying till he says enough. And at that point, I'm busting heaven wide open. Amen. So I came here, and I know I talk big. I have a big talk, but you're looking at a real wimp. I just literally can do nothing without Jesus. I'm like an old glove laying out there in that road, and every truck goes by, runs over it. Sometimes it flips over and lands over in the gutter, and it'll wash out over into the middle of the street. And one day Jesus came along, and he opened that glove up and slid his hand in it, and that glove does everything that hand says do. I found life, man. You're sitting there saying, I wish I could laugh a little. Come with me. There's so much to laugh about and be happy about. I know there's tough things out there. I know that. I just don't pay them a lot of attention. Just ignore the bad. I mean, I'm serious. All we do is focus on it. You can't watch it. If they had an hour of good news, nobody would watch it. You know, all we do is focus on the bad news. We think it's not news if it's not bad. Brian Jennings or whoever he was on TV the other night said, well, the news out of Iraq is there's no news. I said, stupid, that is the news. That's the best news to come out yet. There's no news. It's quiet. We had a night without a death. Oh, thank you, Jesus. Rejoice, America. And what we do? Well, there's no news out of Iraq, so we'll try to find something else ugly to talk about. Anyway, I got to learn to say what I'm thinking. My wife says, baby, you don't ever put your foot in your mouth. You just open your mouth and change feet. She gets really put out with me because she said, you're gung-ho about everything. I said, and that includes being gung-ho. She said, what? I said, I'm gung-ho about being gung-ho. I don't even know what gung-ho means, but I am. One time I decided I'd have us an anniversary boat experience. So we rented this big boat on Lake Powell, and it's over near Utah and Arizona. It's right between, it literally is in both states. And we were out on this gorgeous waters. It's so beautiful. It's one of the most beautiful places in the whole world. This huge 60-foot boat. And we're laying on the bed, and she's in my arm, and I'm talking. She said, Davy. I said, what? She said, Davy. I said, what? She said, do you ever shut up? I said, that offends me. I'm not speaking a word to you for 30 seconds. At 17, I forgot I'd said 30. She loves me, though. I'm a dreamer. You see, whenever you've had your life so many times dangled over the pit of hell and you say there's no way out, and you find a way out because you followed the light, you found a way out because somebody's footsteps were in front of you, and then, as that little poem thing shows, there's not two sets of footsteps, there's one because he carried me. Don't you get this message? It's not about me. It's about him. I'm just a guy living a life that's a big loser, but through Jesus, I'm a major player. I get to do the unbelievable. My friends are friends that are influencing the entire world today. I'm not exaggerating that. The decisions made by my general friends in this war are determining the future of this planet. And it is my distinct honor to lay before them the witness of Jesus Christ often enough that they still call me back and say, teach us and tell us more. This is not me. This is Jesus. And he rules this world. He's Lord of all. Above the earth, on the earth, and beneath the earth, the Bible says. Jesus is Lord. And I should have died. I was on that riverbank with a hand grenade in my hand, and the sniper shot me just as I was throwing it. And the bullet hit the grenade. It was 6 inches from my right ear. It blew up with 5,000 degrees Fahrenheit heat. Melted the skin off my face in 1 second. 60 pounds of my body weight was burned off. In 1 second it was gone. Just boom, and it was off. I looked down, I could see my heart beating, and then I saw my face on my boots. And I was pumping blood out of an open artery. Went blind in my eye, deaf in my ear. My hair gone. My face was gone. My ear was gone. My eyelid and eyebrow and eyelash, all that's blown away. I don't have any muscles. That's why it doesn't blink. I don't mind all the parts they gave me. It's nice, and got an ear and hair and all. I mean, I've chased my hair across church parking lots. I didn't like that. Had a dog bring it back. I didn't like that. He shook it and tearing it up. He thought it was an air possum. I said, it's an Atkins diet, dude. My ear fell off when I was preaching in Jamaica. I didn't know it. It just fell off. I didn't know it. And they go, and I check my fly because I don't know what's wrong when they go, well, my fly's fine. I look over and there's my ear. What do you do when your ear falls off? I picked it up, dried the sweat off, stuck it back on. I thought, well, it's a start to repair the damage here. And they thought it was a miracle, and they all got saved. And I can't tell them, no, it's not a miracle of mine. It's no miracle. It's artificial ear. If I told them that, they would have said I was a phony preacher and stoned me. And then I come here and tell you I went to Jamaica and got stoned. That's not what Pastor wanted me to say. Some of you are still looking over your glasses at me. You're saying he lost more than his thumb. I don't have Dane Bramage. I could be crying about it, but I came here laughing about it. Because the way I see it, the devil took his very best shot. He lit the fuse, lowered the boom, and fired, hit me, knocked me halfway into eternity with every intention of killing me. And I'm still here because no weapon formed against me can prosper. I'm still here because greater is he that's in me than he that's in the world. And that's Bible stuff, Bubba. If you say, well, he never opened his Bible. I don't have to. I'm quoting it for you. No weapon formed against you can prosper. Think about that. With all the knowledge the devil has of how to tempt and destroy human life, and he can't touch you because you're covered by the blood of the Lamb, I'm going to tell you something. It's a great life serving Jesus. But it's about him. It's not about us. It's all about him. And we keep bringing it back to Calvary and bringing it back to realization that it started for us when he gave his life for us. And he rose again from the dead. Let's don't forget that, friends. It's all about Jesus. And so that's been my message. But people stop me all the time and say, whoa, dude, what happened to your face? That's embarrassing. Teenagers. I was burned, bobbing for French fries, I tell them. One kid said, whoa, did you get one? The little snot. The guy in the airplane sitting on my right looks over and he says, I can tell you've been burned. May I ask how? I said, well, last time I flew. He goes into hyperventilation. I have to calm him down to finish my sentence. Last time I flew, the guy sitting next to me asked the same question. Had a 5-year-old was my favorite, though. He walked up and looked at my face and said, what happened to your face? I thought, what a little... I couldn't answer. I was so taken back by his little smarty attitude. And when I didn't answer, he spread his feet and he said, I said, oh, he shouldn't have done that. There's a devil in that little boy. I looked at him and I said, don't eat oatmeal. I didn't know he had oatmeal for breakfast. He grabbed his face and ran screaming. Sometimes they don't run, they just stand there and pee. It doesn't matter to me. Your choice, kid. You're messing with the man now. So bring me your best kid. One of them was sitting on the front row sucking his thumb, and I went up to him and I said, hey kid, I'm preaching. I just stopped and looked and I said, don't suck your thumb. And I held my hand up and he looked at my thumb. Even that was gone then. They made that out of my hip. I don't know if it's a thumb or hip. I don't suck it, I'll tell you that. I said, so there's no thumb. I said, don't suck your thumb. He popped that thumb out of his mouth, let out a wail. His mother told me later he never did suck his thumb again. That was the end of that. He'd start up with it, he'd look down it, he'd put it back down. Have you heard yourself laughing? We're laughing, and I'm telling you about missing parts, being burned, mutilated, shot up, set on fire, and we're laughing. Don't you get it? This is the Christian life, my man. You can go through life burned, hurt, and everything else and find never enough alcohol. How many gallons of Jack Daniels, how many kilos of cocaine would it take? Let me tell you something. It took 1 minute in the presence of Jesus, and I learned to laugh. I got the joy of my salvation back. The joy of the Lord is my strength. This thing revolves and evolves, and it's all about Jesus. You got to keep him in the picture, because look, every time I tell you of a victory, who does it go back to? It goes back to Christ. It goes back to him. I was on that boat burning. I jumped in the water. I thought the water would put the fire out, but it was phosphorus, and I burned in the water. 5,000 degrees, still eating away at my flesh and muscles and bone. I surfaced and I sucked in fire. When I breathe, I suck fire down in my bronchial tube. I'm supposed to not even be able to talk, set my vocal cords on fire, set all those little hair, those little follicles that push moisture up out. I'm embarrassed, but you may have seen this morning I cough a lot because there's nothing to push that moisture back out. And once it gets in there, all of a sudden, the reflexes of my esophagus, I just start coughing. I can't help it. It just happens. And I feel embarrassed. And it has an old grumpy voice. And I was on TBN one night. It was a preach-a-thon. I'll never do that again. I don't know how I got wrangled into that. I'm sitting there and some guy's up preaching before I was. I'm not calling his name. It's not here. I'm not here to be personal about it. But he got carried away with the sound of his own faith. I mean, he's hyperventilating, and I'll never be sick. And when he said it, oh, I'm sitting over there wheezing. Made me so mad, I just muttered and I said, you already are sick. But my lapel mic was on. And it went right out into the studio. And everybody heard it. And I lit up the phone banks. People started calling, whoever said that, run him out of there. The others were calling, saying, whoever said that, put him on the air. I mean, is he a better Christian than me because he doesn't cough? Is he a better Christian than me because he doesn't have a scar on his body? Is he a better godly man because he doesn't get sick with that pneumonia that I have to fight with. Well, then, Bubba, just go for it and be a better man than me. But I can tell you this much. I have encountered, and personally am aware of, and know in whom I have believed that he's able to keep that which I've committed unto him against that day. And I love Jesus Christ with all my heart. And I wouldn't trade my experience for a well body if it makes me cocky and puts me on the air making false claims. You can be cocky, but you better be over 50. How old are you, Pastor? How old? 2 more years you can be cocky, sir. Your day will come. I'm 61 and dangerous. 61 is just 16 backwards. Age is only a number. Amen. Another time I was on TV in there, and I didn't want to be there. I was tired, been on a long tour, and Jan Krause kept saying, you got to come. It's Memorial Day. And I said, ma'am, I'm sorry. I am just worn out. My last experience there was not good. And I embarrassed everybody and said, you already are sick. And she said, no, it's all right. You come back. We love you, Davy. I said, ma'am, she said, there's another man on. I said, who? She said, General Reisner, and he wants you to be on with him. I said, if you'd said that the first time, you wouldn't have to try to convince me. I said, the general's my best friend. He was 7.5 years a prisoner of war in Hanoi Hilton, the greatest man of God that maybe ever wore general stars. I said, I'll go. So I went, and I got there. I said, now, Miss Jan, I really am tired. I said, when I get this way, ask me easy questions. Don't ask questions I don't know the answers to. Sound like Hillary Clinton, don't it? I'm sorry. No, I'm not. So, keep politics out of it, Brother Dave. Sometimes I just can't help myself. I said, ask me easy questions, and she said, okay. The first question she asked me was, Davy, do you still carry baggage out of that war? She's not talking about Samsonite. She's talking about suicide. Are you suicidal? Do you wake up at night screaming, jerking hair rollers out of your wife's hair? Do you have flashbacks? You go through the list of things, of post-traumatic stress disorder, and she's asking me if I've got it. Do you still carry baggage? And I was so tired that I started telling the most intimate damage that had been done to my spirit and how I had become suicidal. And from the first time I saw myself in the mirror, and I told her, I said, when I saw myself in the mirror, they walked away with my future, my hopes. I never dreamed my little teenage wife could ever love me again, so I just pulled the tube out and laid my head back and waited to die. I told her, and I got hungry. I pulled the wrong tube. I pulled out lunch. I said, so next time I felt that urge to take my life, I went and bought a gun and sat in front of a mirror wondering if I'd see my brains come out. And then I realized my brains would be in that old shag carpet we had in our bedroom, and they'd never get it all out. She would never sleep in that room again. So I went in the bathtub and decided they could wash my brains down the tubes. And I realized, well, she'll never shower again. And that tickled me. I started laughing, and I lost my urge to kill myself. So I got out of the tub and sheepishly went and put the gun away and said, another day, another time. It was every day of my life. The thought would go through my mind to take my life, and sometimes I almost did it. But by God's grace, I didn't. I'm telling her this horrific story of the pain that was mental, and she flipped her hair over her head, shoulders. That was a cavalier act. Flipped her hair and she said, well, you know why God lets you be scarred, maimed, and burned, don't you? And I thought, no. But this blue-haired wonder is going to explain it all to me. I was so mad at her, I could have pinched her blue-haired head off. But I wasn't on Jerry Springer show. I was on Christian TV, and I had to fake it for Jesus. So I pretended to be polite when I didn't want to be. I said, no, Miss Jan, I don't guess I know why. God let me be scarred, maimed, and burned. And she looked over her glasses at me, and she said, Davy, he didn't do that to you. He didn't shoot you. He didn't burn you. But he could have stopped it, Davy, and yet he chose not to. You know why? Because he could trust you with the scars, Davy. He could trust you. Wow. I sat back in that chair and I thought, that's the smartest blue-haired wonder I've ever met in my life. That's what it's all about. I thought it was condemnation, and it was instead confirmation. He trusted me. He trusted me. What I thought was a liability, he made it a liberty. Something I could use instead of something that would use me. And from that day to sitting in this chair, I've never had another suicidal thought enter my mind. I've been free. Thank God Almighty, I'm free at last. Boy, times fun when you're having flies. I'm sorry. It's 12:30, y'all. I apologize. I didn't realize I'd gone this long. Well, it's okay for you that love me, but someone may be visiting, and I got to be careful. But bottom line is, I survived it. I walked out of that hospital. But you got to hear the part that's the turning point. When she walked in, my wife, they let visitors come in. The first woman came in, and her husband was in the bed next to mine. And he was burned 100%, third degree. He was the first man I watched die in that hospital. And she threw her ring up on his bed and she said, "You're embarrassing. I couldn't walk down the street with you," and walked out. And a horrific, unbelievable fear just swept over me that my teenage wife was going to do the same thing, and I prepared for it. And I looked around and I couldn't determine which tube was the right one to pull out to kill myself. And now I'm stuck. The door opens and she's standing there. And ladies, I apologize, but it is such a crucial part, and it's carnal. But she was wearing a miniskirt. I said, "Doc," he said, "What?" I said, "I think I'm getting better." He said, "You're not leaving here for a year. Get over it." She walked up to my bed. And she kissed my face, the worst burned part of my body. She said, "I want you to know, I really love you. Welcome home, Davy." And when she says, "Davy," hey. I said, "Baby, I'm sorry I can't look good for you." She said, "You never were good looking." She loves me for who I am, not what I look like. And guys, we missed it when we judge women by their looks. They judge us by our character. Will we make a man that she wants to marry? Will we be that man that gives security? Will I fly off the handle and hit her? Will I beat her child that's born with my DNA running through his veins? Will I be the one? Or not? I'm going to tell you something, guys. It would behoove you to go back and open that door for her again and pull that chair back again. Let her sit down first and buy flowers again. If you didn't in the first place, start now. 1-800-FLOWERS. And if you're broke, do what I do. Go to the cemetery and get them. Get flowers. I don't care where they come from. There's some things she just doesn't need to know. However, I must inform you, though, that God does tell her everything about you. I will never commit adultery on my wife because God will even tell her the woman's name. I'd come home and I wouldn't live another breath. I'd have that name tattooed on my forehead. No, sir. Stay faithful, love her. You don't know what tomorrow holds when you're going to have that emotional stability that only a spouse can bring. I love her. I love her so much. You can tell I miss her today. What is this? It is daytime, isn't it? Yeah, 12:30. That's not midnight, is it? So I'm going to stop here and tell you that it's been a wonderful and awesome joy to come to your church, and I look forward to the day when it's not snowing and I get to be with everybody. But look at your crowd here, pastors. It's a snowy Sunday, and I'm proud of you. I guess y'all are used to this stuff, but it meant a lot to me. You came out. It's text means a lot to me. I truly thank you. I'm going to let Pastor come and he'll, well, I think I'll, okay. Thank you. We're talking among ourselves here. I was afraid of the time, but he said it's okay. I have a video of what I do in Iraq that I thought you might like to see. It's only a song long. Would you? Hey. Well, let's do it. Roll 'em, Dano. Look up there. That's what we built them, folks. Take a look. Take a look. I can take 15 at a time, and that's a few more than what they wanted me to take. They wanted me to keep it around 12. And I can keep 12. It's no problem. They come with no legs. They come with their hearts broken. I built that. It cost $4.5 million. It's at 9,000 feet. It's on the edge of a cliff overlooking the Sangre de Cristo, the Blood of Christ Mountains. Some of the highest peaks in all of Colorado, 5 peaks over 14,000 feet high, and they have snow on them, and what a beautiful place, Eagle Summit Ranch. You're standing, clapping. You're the first church that ever did that. I love you. Thank you. Thank you. You all are beautiful. Well, Pastor's going to come, and there's several things we were supposed to do, and I got all emotional. If you want to help me with this project, that building there is paid for, you saw, but I'm building a gym for them. They love to work out. These boys love to get out there and pump iron and get on the treadmill and ride those stationary bikes. And I need to get them a nice, huge hot tub that they can get in, and nobody can see them. I don't want to put them outside. And when they get in with their legs missing, they're a little embarrassed. But I want to treat them right. They don't pay to come. It costs $7,000 to bring a boy and his wife, because we bring them all the way from their home. We fly them first class, round trip. We treat them like kings. They are, in my book. They're young kings. People say, well, why don't you, how do you do it without charging them? I said, they already paid their part. What's a leg worth? What's an arm worth? So I go out like this and I try to raise the funds. And right now, to finish our gym, we're between $25,000 and $30,000, and then we're finished with the whole project. We don't have a thing left that we have to build or buy if we can just get that money in. So if you feel so inclined today, you can sure make a huge dent in this. There's some of you could probably just write a check for $25,000, never feel it, and walk out of here and forget you did it. That, some of you are good managers of money. God's trusted you with wealth. He's made you a good giver. If you want to do it, do it. I can't. My wife and I had $300,000 saved from the sale of our beautiful home. We sold it and moved into a little 1,800 square foot house. Count the porch, 2,200 square feet. I'm not crying. You hear me. I chose to do this. We had $300,000. We put every penny of it in that building. And that's a 501c3, and I can't even deduct that money because it's a 501c3 in my name. And legally, I can't even deduct it. I don't care. I don't care. Willie George gave me $375,000. Keinath Copeland gave me $275,000. These are guys that caught the vision with me. So we've been able to build everything debt-free, but we're down to the wire. I've got to have it done by the end of the year, and I've got this month only to finish this project. So there's the appeal. If your heart's there and you can do something extravagant, do something extravagant. Go all the way with me. Do it for a kid that gave extravagantly. I love you. I'm Dave Roever, and I approve of this message.